everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. The makers behind the movies Father of the Bride and Father of the Bride Part 2 that came out in the 90s have just released Father of the Bride Part 3-ish a few days ago on September 20th, 2020 as a fundraiser for the World Central Kitchen. We had already planned to recap and review Father of the Bride 1 and 2 months ago because they are family favorites. We had no idea that part 3-ish was coming out, so we're going to review that too. And as if that wasn't already juicy enough, we have also watched the original Father of the Bride from 1950 and its sequel from 1951, Father's Little Dividend. We're about to recap and review it all. But first, we have to introduce ourselves and then decide on the voting symbol that we will use to rate these movies at the end of the podcast. Bro, kick us off for the introductions.
Hi, I'm Aubrey, and I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia, Wright, and I'm the middle.
Hey, I'm Brittany, and I'm the youngest.
And, you know, we have to pick our voting symbols, y'all. And I didn't come up with great stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. I came up with, I'll tell you the three I came up with. So, Vasnik, wedding rings, and then birth certificates. And so I was thinking maybe we need to, I don't know what to do. Did y'all come up with something better?
I was thinking wedding dresses.
What was the first one again?
Vosnik, the sleeping pill from the. I was also coming up with stuff like midlife crisis, empty nest syndrome.
What does that look like? What does a midlife? What is the symbol for that? Is it like a person going like this?
You know it when you see it. You know it when you see it. You know it when you see it.
Well, I like the idea of wedding dresses. However, it doesn't encompass all the movies.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And unless we're going to rate their classicness separately, so and that can be, and we could just quickly come up with one for each movie, or a symbol of, I think all the movies, if we go back to the first and he was smoking his pipe, it could be a pipe.
Yeah.
And that one will cover all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about, it could be a gift box because all of them had gifts, or it could be something like the house, because that was a pivotal thing for even all four of them because
Maple Drive.
Maple Drive. So something along those lines. Maybe.
All
that
right,
would tie all of them together.
Okay,
and
3 houses.
Sounds good. What else, bro? When you were talking about pipe, the opening montage for all of them, the originals and the sequels. I mean, the opening scene is the father sitting in an easy chair.
Oh, the chair.
The easy chair.
That's it.
I think that might be it.
All right.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Aww.
So at the end of this podcast, we will decide whether this group of movies gets 1, 2, or 3 easy chairs. We each have one to confer.
All right.
So first, let's do a quick recap. And I'm just going to say these movies feel so iconic, but let's do a recap really quickly and then we'll hop into discussion. So Father of the Bride, both versions, the 1950 original and the 1995 remake, are about the Banks family and a father that struggles through the process of watching his precious daughter grow up. More specifically, he struggles with watching her fall in love and get married. And we get to watch him humorously be in denial and struggle, not only with the changes in his relationship with his daughter, but with the costs and chaos that come along with a huge wedding. And the daughter struggles too. In both movies, the original and the remake, you know, she is a young woman that loves her father, but has fallen in love with the man and wants to be married. And, you know, and she wants to be married to him, but she's nervous about the transition. And she's nervous because of all of the obvious risks that come along with marriage, but also because she is a young woman with an independent spirit. In both of the movies, a very independent spirit, and she doesn't want to let go of that completely. And so she struggles with that. And I will also say in both movies, in the original and the remake, the fiance, he is pretty much the perfect guy. And he's pretty much coming from a close to perfect family. And so you get to watch all of this frustration play out about him when he really doesn't deserve any of it because he's super great, you know. And then in the original Father of the Bride in 1950, there really were no side characters outside of the family units that drove the story. But in the 1991 remake, there was a wedding coordinator that played a very important role in the story and in the comedy of the movie. The wedding does happen, and it's huge and perfect and expensive and beautiful. And the father and daughter start to find a new kind of dynamic. And, you know, we also get to see the relationship between the father and his wife, and who's the mother of the bride. We get to meet the in-laws. You really do get a chance to watch all of these familiar relationships go through the transition. And that actually brings us to the sequel. So in 1951, the sequel was called Father's Little Dividend. And in 1995, the sequel was called Father of the Bride Part 2. This is the story of, yet again, the Banks family and the father who just is not good with change, having to deal with the change in the daughter's life. You know, this time, though, she's having a baby. And it happens, it's not too long after the wedding, you know, the families have just settled into their new rhythms. And the father is genuinely happy. He has peace in his heart yet again. All is right in the world. And then bam, the daughter's pregnant. He was in such a good place. And so he has to adjust not only to the fact that his precious daughter is now going to be a mother, he also has to adjust to becoming a grandfather, you know, which puts him into a midlife crisis. And it is hilarious. And we also see the daughter and her husband adjusting to married life as parents. And of course, they have a few false starts, but the baby is healthy. Now, in the 1995 version of the sequel, they add another layer where the father and mother of the Banks family, they also get pregnant at the same time. And so at the same time that they're adjusting to becoming grandparents, they're adjusting to being at the beginning of the parenting life cycle yet again, relatively late in life. And of course, the baby is born healthy too. So all the babies are healthy. And, you know, frankly, it's a fun ride, but they did an amazing job in the remakes of adding enough, special storyline to make those movies, you know, really unique. So, and then we have our special little bonus, which is Father of the Bride Part 3-ish. There is no third movie for the 1950s series. But just this year, just a couple of days ago, actually, you know, the makers of Father of the Bride come out with Father of the Bride Part 3-ish. And why is it an ish? It's only 20 minutes long, I think. It's really short. And in this story,
it's done on Zoom.
It was right. It was done on Zoom.
Hashtag quarantine.
And they did such a good job because they came up with a plausible reason why everyone was on a screen.
Right.
There was even a situation where there were two people in the same house and they had come up with a plausible reason why they were logging in from separate parts of the house. You know,
they
so they did a
so
really
well.
good job. And they nodded to right now, to COVID times and this being remote. And so what's the story there? Well, they're having a family meeting that's been called by Maddie, who is the son in the Banks family. And again, he's a character that's present in the first two, but definitely doesn't have his own storyline, really. Well, he has one in this one. He is the storyline. And he has been engaged and was supposed to get married in 2020. But because of COVID, wedding got canceled, and he ends up throwing a surprise wedding for his fiance on Zoom. And he's got her father there. He's got the priest ready to go, and they get married, and they have a surprise virtual wedding. So that's the full story of like all 5 of these movies, or maybe I should say 4.5 of these movies. I hope that was good, bro and sis.
It was fantastic as always.
It was
okay.
Great. It was so
like
great.
There was so much to talk
fantastic.
about. I think that was great.
So kick it off.
Okay, let's kick it off. So we're going to try something a little different. This, you guys know, we're still looking for our format, and so today we're going to kind of talk about different aspects of the movies, and we're going to talk across the movies. We're going to talk about plot and direction, then we're going to talk about characters and the acting, and then we're going to talk about the cinematography and the sound and the music. So let's start with the plot, bro and sis. You know, does this movie, you know, let's talk about the arc of it. You know, was the story plausible for you? Was the premise interesting? Let's talk about the entertainment value, the direction. What did y'all think?
So you're just, well, let me just let you know, okay?
Kick it off, bro.
We're going to talk about everything together, right?
Yeah. Okay,
great. Yeah, just, I got to tell you, the first movie, obviously, that we were introduced to was Father of the Bride 1 in 1991, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's year. So that was, and
that's one of our family movies. Like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, we've watched it a bajillion times.
And so I was, and that's what started, you know, this series of movie watching we did for this podcast. And right from the beginning, there was a lot of nostalgia, obviously, because I remember us not only laughing at this movie, but like painfully laughing at this movie.
Like you're losing it.
And I had that nostalgic feeling, but just watching it with, you know, now, the plot was, for me, it was a little hard for me to accept in a certain way. And I just got to say that the level of disrespect wasn't funny to me now as it was then, for whatever reason. So
what disrespect?
Okay, so when you got the daughter coming home and she's calling the dad George, and you know, just really on this, and then when, you know, he came and he was just acting like everybody's on the same level, you know, that kind of thing. And there was a lot of comedy that jumped off of that relationship of them kind of coming home and, you know, being a little disrespectful or whatever. And I'm not saying it was a good humor. I'm just saying emotionally, it just didn't hit me in the same spot, you know? So, just watching how, of course, George Banks was being extra. Okay, so that's the part of what's going on. But at the same time, part of me was like, man, this guy's making some really valid points here. And it doesn't seem like anybody's listening.
Aubrey's the old man.
He's
I don't know. I don't have
I'm not like super surprised to hear you say that, because I do feel like the older we get, the more like you are sickened by characters, like movies or shows where the male character, where the man is like, you know, at all.
Oh, you're talking about me specifically. Okay.
Yeah, like if the man is like at all, in any way, shape, or form, at someone else's whim, you know, our bro can't stand it. That's what
He
y'all need to know.
can't handle it.
Can't take
He
it.
cannot
And
handle
the character of the father,
it.
you know, and I gotta tell you, bro. So I'm so happy that you introduced it the way you did, where you were talking about like still appreciating it from like our love of it, but having a different perspective on it. Because I mean, first of all, if you can watch a movie as many times as I have watched the 90s versions of Father of the Bride and Father of the Bride 2 and still laugh, you know the joke is coming and you can say the joke and you still laugh out loud. That is good comedy. That is good writing. I mean, that is just well done. So the movies are just good. But watching it now, I had a lot of feelings. Number one, it made me miss our dad, you know, and I think part of it was the memories of like watching it with our dad. But the other thing is it's about a father-daughter relationship. And listen, forget what you heard. Me and Brittany are daddy's girls. We are. And so it's like, you know, watching that father and daughter, it was emotional for me in a way that it hadn't been the last bajillion times I saw the movie. And the other piece was I now can relate to that feeling of bringing a man home to your family and hoping they like him, you know, and just you're all in, you know, you feel you've got something great and you want the family to come along. And so I was also able to relate to that character differently now because I've had adult experiences similar.
Right.
So what did you think, sis? Again, just from that perspective of like looking at it fresh eyes as an adult.
Well, first I was kind of laughing at us because I said to myself, which we acknowledged in our last podcast, that we're doing something when we say complete 180, extremely different from the last 5 episodes that we've done. It's like the whole other side of the country in suburbia. You know, all white family. Like it's just
from the wire. Yeah, from recapping the wire.
It was just so funny to me that it was just going completely different the other way. The other part of it is I would say I did not laugh as much as Father the Bride 1 in 1991. There were parts though that I still expected them and it didn't make me want to turn it off. It wasn't as if it was like, oh, I just can't wait for this movie to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
exactly.
Like,
That's exactly how
I was cracking up. I
already knew Janelle was cracking up.
I was cracking up.
I didn't have that feeling where it was like, okay, I want to just turn it off. I loved watching it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it was like, it didn't make me laugh the way I thought that it would.
Yeah.
Although there were still parts that did make me smile or chuckle. Like the part whenever he is in the grocery store and he's losing his mind about these hot dogs.
That made me smile.
It just made me smile, but it also made me think about just the times that we're in. And it's like things like this, they will make this is just the icing on top of the cherry, on top of the cake. So much stuff is going on. And you want me to buy these 8 hot dogs and these 12 hot dog buns. This doesn't make any sense. And so just watching him just basically lose his mind was hilarious.
Yeah.
I did laugh at that part.
One thing that always bothered me about that part, even as a child, was they had a lot of people at the house. So if he would have just bought 2 hot dog buns and 3 hot dogs packages,
he
was
having a mental break. Okay, so you're now
because even the way he was doing it though, because he was taking 4 buns out of several packs of buns.
That's what I'm saying.
It was so funny because it was like he's literally losing his mind.
But I love
like Steve Martin, he's a genius.
It's like, was he planning to pay less at the register? Because that's like. What's your plan, buddy?
None of it makes sense.
But Brittany, here's
your point, bro. It's like none of it made sense. It was like you're still buying several packs.
Right.
Brittany, you missed the really disconcerting part of this whole situation is that Genia really identified very quickly and was able to explain, well, he's losing his mind. So, you know, but I mean, of course, when you lose your mind, that kind of stuff makes sense.
Yeah.
And I just
1 + 1 can equal 3 when you're losing it.
But I'll tell you this. One thing that is interesting though is that even though me and Brittany didn't laugh, like first of all, I could envision Janai laughing.
Oh, I was cracking up. I mean, like movie. Tears.
But I could already envision it. But what's good about the writing is that the plot, just like Brittany said, it didn't feel painful to watch. It was like, you know, and I think that really speaks to good writing, because that means there's good pacing.
Definitely.
Right? So like you feel like you're moving through the story, not quickly, but it doesn't feel like it's dragging on.
Right.
It feels like the right amount of time, so it still makes it enjoyable to watch no matter what.
And you know what? Go ahead, bro.
No, I'm just saying, so I just wanted to echo that, you know, based on what we're saying, is like, no matter what, you could tell it's great writing, because there were still parts to enjoy. Like, I still enjoyed when they met, was it Frank? Yeah.
Yes.
When they met Frank and his assistant. I still enjoyed it. And I still, you know, internally laughed when they were talking about the cake. When he looked at that cake and saw the $1,200 that the wedding cake was going to cost $1,200.
And watching just Martin Short as Frank, it's just when he in interviews, when he talks about it, he says he didn't know what was going to come out of his mouth. Like, he just, this is the accent that just happened, and so he just had to do it. Whatever.
Yeah, because he's a character actor, and
he did such a great job. And that part when he just comes and sits beside them, in between them on that couch with this giant book of of cakes, and just no, wait, don't do that. And then
funny, so funny.
It's just his whole essence. And you know, just BD Wong was just his sidekick, but BD Wong still had a great, just presence.
Can I put aside? That was crazy. I forgot that BD Wong was the assistant. And the thing is he plays such serious characters now.
All the time.
So it's like you can't even, I mean.
All the time.
Did you guys ever watch Mr. Robot?
Mm-mm.
No.
Anyway, he's in that. And I'm just saying that's my last, vision.
Yeah, I think of him from like Law and Order.
That's what I'm saying.
SVU. Yeah.
But he was funny. He was so, and I love comedians who could do both. I mean, actors who could do both sides.
Yeah. And you know what? Can I ask a question though, y'all? Like I'm thinking about again just on the storytelling, like on the plot, you know, and we're talking a lot right now about the '90s version, right? Because those are the versions we're passionate about. We love them. I gotta tell you, I'm happy we watched the 50s versions after we watched the 90s versions that we love, because a couple of things. You were able to see how the 90s movies were really they really honored. I think this is how remakes are supposed to go, where you really honor the original, but make it your own.
Absolutely.
But just in terms of the writing and the plot, they kept the plots pretty much the same, but they punched up certain parts, they added layers to make things more complex and more modern and more funny. But again, the point I was going to make was that if I had watched the 1950s versions first for this current viewing and then watched the 90s versions, I think it would have taken something away from the 90s versions, because of the places where there was overlap. Watching the 90s versions first and then watching the 50s versions, it was a pleasant surprise to see the jokes that I already knew in their original form. And it was like, I can
see that.
It was a wonderful delight to see, there were certain things that are iconic to us from those movies that were actually taken from the originals. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on like just that comparison and that journey of like watching the ones that we know and love so much, but then seeing like the pieces of them that, you know, really were taken from the earlier.
Well, the funny thing is that I definitely wanted to get into this as well. And it was the opposite for me, that I kind of wished I saw the 50s versions first, because watching the 50s, the 1950 Father of the Bride made me retroactively enjoy the Father of the Bride from 1991 more, because I felt like it was a better movie than I realized. Because the thing is that they when people, one thing I love when people pay homage and cover a song or do it well, do a remake.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. When you go too far, it's like you're just trying to do something different, you know? But like if you're going to do a remake, do a remake. And there's this delicate balance between paying homage and being original at the same time. And I just felt like they did an amazing job of that, because like even in the beginning part where where they talked about the coat, remember where he told her to wear the heavy coat and she said no, and then and then the
fiance
said,
is like, you really should get the coat.
And then she's like, oh, okay. You know, and what's also interesting about that is that so much has changed between 1950 and 1991, but some things don't. And that was the other thing that's interesting.
Love that.
In the first movie, they were sleeping in separate beds. Right, you know, even
I was like, why is this?
But
why was this ever a thing? Why was this ever a thing? Like, I just don't understand the whole point of life for like this. I will say, speaking for America, right? The American dream is to get married and have children, 2.5 of them, and it's like, how are we doing this in separate beds?
Well,
why are we trying to be modest
at the time?
I think it was, but it's like, why are we being modest in marriage? What's happening?
Well,
right
it was
now?
more about it was more about the presentation of marriage, because back in the 50s there were a lot of regulations around.
But did they do it for real? Because I think that was just a TV and movie thing.
I know for sure that at that time, showing a married couple laying in the same bed was, you know,
it was taboo. So I always
showing a pregnant woman as pregnant, the fact that they were doing that in that era was really, they were pushing the boundaries a little bit.
That's so funny to me.
So, I'm not going to send you to Google, Janelle. I'm not going to do it, but I'm curious, because I always thought that was just a TV thing and movie thing, but I didn't think people did that in. She's on Google.
I don't know.
So Brittany, we'll know shortly. Right. But anyway, we'll finish what you were saying.
I will tell you that was something when I was speaking with, I think I said it to both of you, just how both movies were very clearly forward moving in what they were doing.
Right.
They were very much so at the time.
Right.
So there was a way to be ahead of the game. They were ahead or in line with the culture, but more aware of how they were with the culture. So for example, in Father of the Bride, the original in 1950, the family had a maid, and the maid's name was Delilah. And Delilah was a part of their family. She wasn't, even though she was a maid, she wasn't being treated like, oh, go do this, go do that. At the end of the night, after the wedding was in their house, they were like, well, we need to clean up so Delilah doesn't have to worry about this.
That was interesting. That was definitely interesting.
this type of thing, having this Black maid and this white family saying these words in 1950, like, this is forward thinking. And,
Well,
you know, it just,
they still, you know, they were calling her by her first name, and she was calling
sure,
them Mr. and Miss. Sis, so.
Sure, but I mean, and you know what? And that's the thing. We can get into the whole thing about
but
ma'am
it
and
was
sir
a relatively
and Mr.
progressive. It was a relatively
Exactly.
progressive view of it.
Absolutely. You know, and so in terms of how she was portrayed and how those things, we didn't have any parts where people were just being rude to her. Like, you just didn't see those things, even in terms of when because the daughter in the movie, what is her real name? Now it's moving me.
Elizabeth Taylor.
The original, thank you, Elizabeth Taylor. The daughter in the movie, she is having this conversation with her father about how she's going to have this birth and the baby's going to be in the room with her, and how they're going to lay the baby on her chest, and how they're going to and she's doing a natural birth, and just all these different things. And it was like, this is new and fancy in this movie. Like, this is crazy. Or even the fact that they were putting an air conditioner unit into the window. That was new. And so it was just watching
the
movie.
The electric razor.
Yeah.
The intercom. Yes, the electric razor. Yes. Like, just watching these things. And even right down to the fact that the cake cost $400, and that was expensive. And so even that was something I started looking at, was like the average cost of weddings during these times. And these costs, they didn't just like double or triple over time. Like, they didn't just like double, they like tripled, quadrupled over time, how much people were spending on average weddings from the 1950s to the 90s. Even in terms of how in the first movie, the mom, she didn't finish high school. She got married and was pregnant. She said, I was watching my friends walk across the stage while I was pregnant. She was married and pregnant before she graduated from high school. And so she didn't finish high school. And so to then move into 1991, where you're seeing the daughter is not living at home, she's abroad in Rome. She is, although Elizabeth Taylor was very forward thinking in this movie as well. But you have the mom, she is a career woman. Diane Keaton's character, she's a career woman. She got married at 22 instead of 18. So she was done with school. Like, these different things, they were subtle nuances, but they were just keeping up with the times that were happening. But with that being said, I also thought about these movies being made in this time, in 2020, and I kind of chuckled. I said the opening part where in the 1991 version, where Steve Martin is riding with his red sidekick hat on. And I said, oh my, how that red hat could not have happened right now unless you were clearly trying to make some sort of statement. Just how, even if someone decided to do another remake, how they would have to adjust to the times. But with that being said, Father the Bride 3, it adjusted to the times of 2020, of how those things were working. So I just appreciate how anyone who is directing these movies, their mindset is not, let's stay back, let's challenge whatever as far as we can for whatever this time frame is. So I appreciated that about the movies.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And they managed to keep that theme of the family we're dealing with as a progressive family.
Yes.
And again, there were just, we talked about a couple of them already. There were places where they really, really, in the remakes, really, honored and really, just did a salute to the originals. And I wrote down a couple of them.
All right.
So one is the opening scene being the father sitting in an easy chair after a family event has occurred and being the narrator for the story. They did that for the 1950s versions. They did it for the 90s versions. Again, Bro called it out, that little exchange between the daughter and her fiance when she takes his word to go and get the sweater or the coat. That happens in the original. and it happens in the remake. That scene in the 90s movies that I think everybody remembers, and this is one of the ones that had me laughing out loud, I'm not gonna lie, where they're going through the cards of the RSVPs for the wedding. The people they're about to invite to the wedding, and the father, Banks, is like, no, we are not inviting all these people. We have to get rid of some of these cards. That scene happened in both. The families both lived at 24 Maple Drive.
Right.
You know, that scene of Steve Martin trying to fit in that suit. He cannot fit in that suit, Steve Martin.
Even if you could, that suit is done.
It's ugly. It's over.
That wasn't the original. You know, and then there were just certain lines, you know, and the one that I wrote down that was my favorite was when the father of the bride sees the mother of the bride when she's dressed to go to the wedding.
Yeah.
And she's at the top of the stairs, and he says, I knew I'd never be able to remember what she wore that day, but I also knew I'd never forget the way she looked. They took that line right from the original, plopped it into the remake.
So perfect.
It was just such a wonderful way to just make sure that the love and relationship between those two characters, that it remained as sound.
Yes.
And see, that's what I'm talking about. It's just like when somebody remakes a song and they put too many runs in there. It's like, all right, I know you were listen.
You're doing too much.
The song, the reason why you're remaking it is because the song was good. Just sing the song.
It didn't need that extra snare. It didn't need that extra snare.
No,
don't give it to it. No, please. Don't do it.
That scene, the first movie, the Father of the Bride movie ending with the husband and the wife dancing, it was from the original, and it was in the 90s remake. Like that kind of thing, they did such a great job.
I wanted to ask you guys.
Don't forget about the figurine too. That figurine of that little ugly clock that in the very real one aunt sent. Then they also had figurine as one of the wedding gifts in the original. I was awesome. Like, how you
that whole scene. I wanted to ask you guys, what did you think about as far as the movie Move In? It was interesting watching in 1950. They didn't have music like that in the movies. So from one aspect, I guess you can focus more on what people are saying and stuff, I guess. But I like having the music punctuate certain comedic stuff that's going on in the movie. So like, I like that over time that movies have added music to punctuate what's going on and stuff like that. What did you guys even notice that?
Definitely noticed. So let's go to that. So let's now go to cinematography, sound, and music. That whole category. Definitely noticed, bro. Actually, I think, Brittany, did I bring that up to you? We were talking at some point, and I was like, I remember this specific observation I was making. I was like, you know what? The 1950s Father of the Bride was truly funny, like laugh out loud funny at parts. And they did it without the help of a song to kind of add levity to the scene. And so it really just required like a wonderful and very real and funny delivery from the actor. So not having the music made the actors, they had more work to do. And I noticed it and I appreciated it, you know.
I got you.
I was not paying attention.
It says a lot though that you didn't.
1,000%. Because even when Genia and I were talking about it, I was like, "Oh,
like, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I had said.
True.
Literally, guys, even in this moment when Aubrey just asked the question, I was like, I still don't know what they're talking about.
Wait, what about watching in black and white? How did y'all feel about watching in black and white? Because so that's another thing. 50s movies, black and white.
I felt classy. I said, "Ooh." I feel real like a film buff right now. I'm watching a black and white film.
It definitely gives that, and there's some black and white movies as far as like musicals and stuff like that we already talked about that we want to review. at some point. But I gotta say that it's interesting, but I definitely, if I was around at that time, would have been very excited when the movie started coming out. Because
what does this dress look like?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. That
is this like blue or black?
When it hit me was when he was mixing the drink, and it was like I couldn't tell. Like, is that water? Is that vodka? Is that lemonade? Is that iced tea? What is it? And,
man, you know what? I agree. Obviously, color is better. It's better to see what's really going on, see the reality. But what I was struck by was like black and white movies with no music track. It was just like, it was up to the writing. It was up to the performances. It was up, like the pressure on the actual, like the nuts and bolts of the content has to stand up so much more when everybody's outfit is gray. And so I just, everybody's outfit is gray, and so I was watching it more like, wow, I'm really enjoying, and I watch black and white movies, but just for the sake of comparing them, I was like, man, I'm really enjoying this, like, and not like, I didn't feel like I was
not missing it.
I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would.
I think something happens in our brains where you almost have to be able to be okay to place something where it is. Mm-hmm. I can't put the expectations of a 1990s movie on a 1950s movie.
There you go.
I can't put the expectations of a 2020 movie on a 1990s movie. I just can't do it. You have to allow them to be who they are, the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I will tell you, when speaking of color, I would love to see what it looked like in the color when the father was having that dream where basically he was going crazy. He was late for the wedding.
And that was and what she's talking about, just if you haven't seen it, they did a scene where he was having a nightmare, and it was really good. It was really well done.
Good.
Really well done.
And you're like, good. This is 1950 special effects, and they did it.
He's like sinking into the floor.
Into the floor. His clothes are falling and stretching off.
And then the floor was real bouncy at one point.
Exactly. It was checkered.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
Now, look, let me say this to abruptly go to Father of the Bride 2. Father of the Bride 2, though, actually made me laugh. Father of the Bride 2 made me laugh. First of all, when you go to a movie sequel, it's always touchy because it's rare that you're going to have a good movie sequel. A lot of times movie sequels just don't hit the mark. But I think this one escalated everything, but they did it again in a good way.
Same thing.
Yeah, like they took stuff a little further, but it wasn't ridiculously over the top. But I'm gonna tell you, when he was the scene where when they find out she's pregnant, the George Banks and his wife, the 50-year-olds find out they're pregnant. That had me laughing just like the first time I saw it.
I'm pretty sure I fell off the couch.
Yes.
No.
He said, the doctor said to Diane Keaton, you're having a baby. He stood up and just, who, may I ask, is the father? You two-time Montage?
He called her by her maiden name. He started calling her by her maiden name.
It's still funny. Talking about it. It's so funny.
It was so funny. And when they were driving home, and she kept seeing, she was looking out the car window, and she kept seeing all the beautiful stuff about having a baby. all the mothers having these beautiful moments, and then he's looking out.
Those pictures were so bad.
Just seeing, and all he could see was the fathers being completely terrorized by their children.
Yes.
That was funny
That
in 2020.
I love the way they shot that. I love the way they shot that with the two of them looking at the same car, one side, the other side. Oh, that was really well
Same
done.
street, two separate sidewalks. It was so funny.
But it's like the law of attraction. You see what you're looking for, right?
Like that's good. That's good.
And the slapstick comedy was like right in that sweet spot, you know, because like for me, I don't like the slapstick to go too far, but when Franck had given him those sleeping pills,
listen, I'm sorry, I just have to take over this part because when I tell you, I literally had to catch my breath. I was
so funny.
I went into that silent laugh that you are not making. You're not exactly. If anyone was to come in here and then see, like, what are you okay? Like, that is what was happening to me.
Can I quickly talk about the opposite of the quiet laugh is the quiet cry? Like, if you get a real bad whooping, that's another one where it's like
I can't do it.
That was just a random. That exists on both sides. It exists on both sides of the spectrum.
You brought that up.
No, I'm just saying it's just funny how that exists on both ends of the spectrum.
Both ends of the spectrum.
Does anyone else have anything miserable to inject into the conversation?
Oh, Janelle, are you traumatized by the one spanking you got your whole entire life?
Oh, some people follow the rules.
One thing about the sequel is that you know someone did well in the original movie when they feel like we can bring back the original cast and not add anyone. They literally just added infants and a couple of doctors. Like they did not add.
Name.
There was nothing. It was still the same families, still the same concept of just watching these families live through life. And so another nod that I do want to say to both of the sequels, the original and the newer one in the 90s, was that watching the new husband of the daughter really take care of her and fawn after her, and then watching people go through the new woes of marriage. You know, they're upset about certain things that when you finally find out why she's crying just these horrible tears, it's like, he got me a blender. And it's like, what? Girl, if you don't go blend something, it's just, you know, you hear these things. And so there was a part in the original sequel. What is it? The baby. What was their name of it? Father's Little Dividend. And the daughter, she is upset because she is believing that the husband is cheating. And so she packs up her stuff.
Yeah.
And she takes a cab and she takes it to her parents' house. Now that is unbeknownst to the father. She is sleeping outside, y'all. She is sleeping outside because the doctor said she needs to get plenty of air for the baby, which was so funny. But then what happens is, of course, the husband is up late into the night. He's freaking out. He doesn't know where his wife is. He eventually calls the parents. And the father and him, they go looking. They find out, the father and him call the cab company. And eventually the cab company does tell them where they drop her off, which is at their home. They go back to the parents' house. And as she's about to go upstairs to go to sleep in the parents' house because she doesn't want to go home, the husband is like, well, make sure that she you can't keep going up all these stairs. The doctor said that you can't walk up a ton of stairs. So you just have to go upstairs and you just have to stay up there and make sure she gets 8 glasses of water and make sure that she's taking her calcium pills because she'll forget. Did you bring your calcium pills with you? And she's like, no, I forgot them. And then so he's just going, and then he says, sit down. You're not supposed to have these shoes on like this. The doctor said you're not supposed to do this. And so he starts to take her shoes off for her. And so you just see him taking care of her, which makes me think about all 4 of the movies, these men truly loving their women and truly loving their wives and fawning over them and taking care of them, no matter if they do something that's a little crazy. George
and Brittany, it's really all 5 of the movies. Same thing in the
did I say 5? I meant to say
4.
5. Yeah. I'm sorry. On all 5 of the movies, you're watching these men really love the women that they're with, and they don't care about looking crazy or doing too much or saying it and being ashamed of it, that I am in love with this woman and that I think she's the most beautiful woman. And that even in 3-ish, where he's like, I'm planning this wedding. I don't want to wait. I know we're in quarantine. Everything is ridiculous right now, but I want to make sure that you are my wife, and I'm going to do it by any means necessary. And so just seeing the classic love story is really beautiful sometimes, even if it's in a comedic way.
And sis, you're giving us the perfect segue into the actors and the actual, like, the acting, the characters as they were written, but then also the acting. So let's talk really quickly. I'll read through just some of the key cast members. So in the when we're talking about the 90s versions, the 91 original, 95 remake, 2020 3.5. We have Steve Martin as George Banks. Diane Keaton is playing his wife, Nina Banks. Kimberly Williams is playing the daughter, Annie Banks. The little brother is Kieran Culkin, which me and Brittany were so surprised. We're like, oh, that's Macaulay Culkin's brother. Kieran Culkin is Maddie Banks. And then the fiance, the husband, the fiance, George Newbern, plays Brian McKenzie. And we, of course, have Martin Short playing Frank Egelhofer. B.D. Wong, as we just talked about, was playing Frank's assistant, Howard Weinstein. And then we had Eugene Levy, who played like a strange character in both of them. In Father of the Bride 1, he played a wedding singer. In Father of the Bride 2, in 95, he played a house developer, which I thought was so funny that they brought him back. Now, if we talk about the cast in the 50s movies, these are some big names, in both cases, So for the 1950s Father of the Bride, we had Spencer Tracy as Stanley Banks, Joan Bennett playing his wife, Ellie Banks. We had Elizabeth Taylor as the daughter, Kay Dunstan, Dawn Taylor playing her fiance, Bucky Dunstan. And then we had, they had other big names, playing the in-laws and things like that. And they had one of our favorite actors, Russ Tamblyn, playing the little brother. And he is Gideon from 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, which is one of our favorite movies.
The same. Oh gosh.
The same. So, and then when you're, and I forgot to mention, in Father of the Bride in the 2020 version, part 3, all of our favorite characters, and they added a woman, Rachel, who plays, Kieran Culkin's wife, Alexandra Shipp. So just naming, like, these are not low budget films. These are big names. And I think we got our money's worth in the 50s version
without a shadow
and
of a doubt.
in the 90s version. Let's talk about it, because I feel like, to talk about these specific actors and their portrayals and the way that their characters were written, can we please just start with, like, the father?
Well, don't forget to add Robert De Niro. Was it Robert De Niro?
Yeah,
he was in Father of the Bride 3-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun seeing.
That was fun. Too. What we're got? Well, let's start with. I think we have to start with that father. He sets the tone at the very beginning. He is the narrator of all of the movies, and it's just, if the wrong actor would have been in those roles.
Yeah.
it would have just ruined everything. I thought that 1950s guy was hilarious.
He did a great job.
And of course, Steve Martin is a genius. He is a genius.
A comedic genius. His timing,
he is a genius. His mom.
His mom.
Yes, the mom.
We have to tell you, Janiyah and I all the time, just randomly.
All the time. It's not because we were doing this podcast.
It's not.
We always, as a part of our normal lives, meaning
our
always,
normal lives, every day.
We use the
hello. Every day.
It's at least once a day, honestly. Sis, maybe we skip a day here and there, but pretty much every day, one of us has said to the other, hello.
And the response is what?
Hello.
So
we love some
Frank. That I know we're not talking about him right now, but
that Martin Short,
he was explaining it to George in the mom.
In the mom.
I was like, what?
Okay, all right. Clearly, we're talking about Martin Short right now. We'll come back to the father.
Sorry.
Okay, so let's talk about Martin Short, because that character in the original films in the 50s, there was a coordinator. You know, they called him a caterer, right? And he played that role, but he was very minor. He truly was not, memorable or special. He had a flair to him and an arrogance, but he was not special. They elevated that role for the 90s remakes, and they made it a significant relationship for the Banks family, and they cast it with Martin Short, and that was the right thing to do because he is hilarious. And I watched a interview of him where he was reflecting on playing that character, and he said the funniest thing. He was like, our goal was for the audience to believe that George couldn't understand him, but it needed to be clear enough that the audience and the wife and the daughter could understand. But it had to be convoluted enough that you would believe that George couldn't understand. And so he said, we would just do take after take. And he said, we would start with like, blah, 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 and then he said, and then we would turn it down a little until we got right to that point where it was like, okay, we believe he can't understand you, but everyone else can. Martin Short, you are a genius, Martin Short.
Martin Short, and where are you from? Like, no one.
He said that. He said that. He was like, this character. He said, and this is what he was saying in the interview. And where is Frank from? No one knows.
No one knows. Who speaks like this anywhere?
No one. No one. Oh, that Martin Short. He did that thing.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely extremely well casted.
Even B.D. Wong as the assistant. Funny.
The funny thing is that I don't know what it is. I can't recognize. I know that the 1950s movies were well casted, but I can't explain it as much or recognize why as much as I can with the 1990s version, just because no matter what, we can't watch the 1950s movie as a person in 1950. Like you no matter what, you can't.
But bro, the fact, okay, what makes a comedic character hilarious is that they take themselves seriously.
Right.
And they're funny to watch.
Right.
That father in the 1950s, the way he was delivering his lines, his facial expressions when things were happening, him just being completely overwhelmed, his narration with that dry humor that wasn't him trying to tell a joke. He's just truly befuddled by what's happening. Bro, that was great comedic delivery.
Right. Yeah, I get.
It was. It would be funny now.
Well, what I'm trying to describe, just from my perspective, is that okay. So watching Father of the Bride, Steve Martin was already a legend going into this movie, obviously.
But Aubrey knew that. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But and what I'm saying is that watching him interact with other actors, knowing that Steve Martin was the man, especially back then.
You had a relationship with Steve Martin already,
and to see him not have to overdo it and let other people shine. It was just interesting. And what I'm saying is the first guy might have did that exact same thing.
Sure.
But I just can't see it because, and I don't know everybody else.
All of the people.
Yeah. So, but like watching this, you can see how, man, like the scenes, for example, in the first one, when you talked about when they sat on the couch, and you could just see Steve Martin. It's like, okay, this is Martin Short scene, but at the same time, I'm just with my facial expressions, I am fully like in the scene.
I'm in my character
at the same time as this other character is controlling the scene, and I love that when I can see. Because I feel like actors like Steve Martin raise up the whole cast. It's like everybody gets better when they're around certain levels of genius.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I can recognize because, of course, I like Diane Keaton and I like Martin Short and all that. But I can say that for most of them, this is my favorite movie of them. But for Steve Martin, I still got, Three Amigos and just all different types of things.
Are officially dismissed from the Family Podcast. How dare you diminish the portfolio of Diane Keaton? Diane Keaton
I'm not
You did. I mean, how could you possibly act like this is like the best thing of all of her work that you've ever seen?
Listen, all right, first of all, okay. I think you're really taking
you're not this is not like an amazing portrayal from her. She's amazing in this.
I just said she's amazing.
Well,
the whole cast.
Say it more emphatically. Because that Diane Keaton. Listen.
This is actually
100% incorrect about everything you're saying.
This is actually reminiscent of the emotion. This is why men can laugh so much at the Steve Martin scenes, like when she was complaining about the blender, because we often find ourselves in these Twilight Zone conversations.
Bro,
we really don't know how we got there.
I didn't appreciate how you were celebrating Steve Martin in a way that made the other actors relatively not offering at that same level. That's what I'm struggling with.
Let me even before you make your point, brother, let's be clear. Wait a minute now. This movie was about George Banks, who is a crazy person. He's literally an irrational crazy person. You picked out the one scene where the daughter was irrational.
Thank you, sis. Brittany, take your mic off of the stand and drop it because you needed to.
Did you just do that?
Was Steve Martin the lead of the movie?
Yes.
Okay, so who do you think got paid the most in Father of the Bride?
What is your point?
Oh, listen, to get into the fact that this is a true thing that is happening in Hollywood, that women are still not getting paid as much as they're supposed to.
And let me just
all right. Well, before my point gets taken any further out of context than it already is, let me just attempt to clarify that what I'm saying is great leads elevate everybody else in the movie, whether they are whoever the lead is. And I'm just saying that to me is a great lead. When everybody around you gets funnier based on you, I feel like that makes a good lead. And I'm saying in terms of comedy, this was what I think about when I think about Diane Keaton. That's all. I mean, was there another comedic role that I'm not thinking about with Diane Keaton?
Yeah, many. First Wives Club. Hello, what are you doing? Well,
why in the world would I watch a movie called First
all right,
Wives Club?
that's going to be our next one.
Is done. But
I'm literally asking. I've never seen First Wives Club. And
now you will.
Aubrey is not going to know a lot of Diane Keaton stuff, and that is because she is the genre of movie that Aubrey normally watches. She does not be in that. She doesn't make those.
Well, let me so bro, listen. I would like to say that generally I agree with your point. But my problem with what you saying about this, with you saying that about this particular cast, is because it's almost like you're giving Steve Martin credit for elevating the performances of these others as if they weren't also elevating his performance. That's what I'm struggling with, because here's the thing about, I think if you have a Steve Martin and you have a Diane Keaton in a scene, well, it was implied. That was your implied secondary.
Thinking about the things that I said, and
that was your secondary statement. You didn't say it explicitly. You said it implicitly.
That's right. Women know what you're thinking and what you're saying. Right.
That's exactly right. I've known you for a very long time,
bro. No, your words were that he allowed them. You just literally made this statement that his performance elevated their comedy. And it's like,
they elevated each other, is what I'm saying.
I think what Genia is saying, or my point is
I take it all back. I apologize. I take it all back. I take it all back. I apologize.
You're right. Do not take it back.
Huh? Yes.
Do not take it back. But what I want to say,
I don't know what I was saying.
Because Genia's point is that they all, you saying that Steve Martin elevated everyone. Genia is saying that everyone elevated everyone.
Right. I see where I was wrong. Everybody did elevate everyone.
Don't do that. And
I'm saying I agree with you now. All right.
Don't do that. But what my opinion would be that they got 3 big names to make this movie. Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, and Martin Short. Now that is just my opinion. That they had 3 large names, experts that came into this, and they all did well. And now I will agree to your point, bro. For the side characters that we don't really know that well, which would be the son, the McCulkin, the daughter, I don't remember her name, and the son-in-law, and even the parents, of the son-in-law. Like, I would totally agree to that point of him coming in and allowing them whatever space they needed to be great. But I would just say that those 3 were 3 big names to me that came in my opinion, their egos weren't so big that they all couldn't just do well in that way. But yes, listen, these are some bold statements happening on this
on
this here podcast. I love it.
I gotta tell y'all, I'm a student of comedy right now. The last couple of years, I have actually been taking classes in improv and sketch writing and character writing. And it's just like, you see a master, you know it when you see it, and it is just like that Diane Keaton, that Steve Martin, that Martin Short. I mean, they are just so good. They know what it is to make people laugh. They know what it is to tell a story. They know what it is to be fully in a character. And you know what? This is actually something else Martin Short said in that exact same interview. He was like, there's no point at which Franck is trying to be funny. He was like, Franck is just being himself.
Right.
And he was like, and that's what makes him funny. And he was just talking about the number of takes that they had to do to get that character right, because of not wanting him to be, cartoonish, basically.
Wanting him
to be authentic. Exactly. Exactly.
They
Yeah.
did a great job at that.
It was just really good. And you know, and there was another, when we were going down the cast list, I skipped one person I shouldn't have skipped. Now, let me tell y'all going back to the 1950s movies, the way that I recognized Russ Tamblyn was his voice. When I heard him, and I was like, is that Gideon? Because I recognized his voice from Seven Brides with Seven Brothers. And then I looked up the credits and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Gideon from Seven Brides with Seven Brothers, who was playing Tommy Banks. I had that exact same experience with another character. Did you all? So I heard the voice and I was like, is that Glinda, the good witch from The Wizard of Oz? And I looked it up and it was her. I couldn't believe it.
The mom.
I'm
Genia, that is so good. You want to know why? Because
Billy Burke. Listen, I heard her voice and I was like, that's Glinda the Good Witch.
Genia, that is so crazy to me because I was listening and I was like, do all people from this time and era sound the same when they're talking in these movies? Genia, I didn't realize that.
So her voice felt familiar to you, but you just couldn't place it. I knew immediately. I was like, that's Glinda the Good Witch. And can I tell you something? I think, and again, I don't know if this is the case, but I was thinking like the fact that just their voices I was able to recognize their voices. I wonder if it's because it was black and white, no soundtrack. So there wasn't all this other stimulation to distract me. And so my brain didn't have so much to process in the scenes. And literally, Gideon saying 2 lines. He didn't even say much. He said
he literally didn't say much.
I was like, that's Gideon.
The first
thing that mom said, I was like, that's Glinda. And I just wonder. I wonder if it's because of how simple the presentation was.
What year was Wizard of Oz?
Oh, good.
It was
question.
I thought that was 30.
I'm happy you asked.
Well, bro, also I wanted to tell you, I did look 1939.
Okay. So it was okay.
Wow.
But and bro, I did look up the double bed thing. And it turns out that it's beginning in the 20s, twin beds were seen as fashionable.
Oh.
Now this is just one source that I found very quickly, But
I mean,
we're
not talking about COVID-19 here, right? We can just I think it's okay. We can be
okay. Yeah. It was like, but then going into the 1950s, separate beds began to be seen as a sign of a distant or failing marriage. So, and so it changed over time. And by the 1960s, twin beds were completely out.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay.
According to site.
According to this site.
But that explains why the censors from the 50s felt like it was the right thing to portray, because they would have had thinking from of conservative eras prior.
Gotcha.
I would tell you this, something that again was forward moving was the fact that when he was being very sexually attracted to his wife in 1951, it makes me wonder what, people who were doing movie reviews back in the day were like, listen, this is risque. When he pinches her butt as they're walking out the door, she's looking at him like,
he pulls her body to his. He gets a little frisky. But then again, in the 1990s version, they had sex on the floor of the kitchen, so they got a little bit more frisky.
Hello, that was very frisky. But he turned the lights out.
I love that marriage. And the reason I love it is because it is not perfect. I just hate when people act like, relationships are not like a daily choice. And you see Nina Banks in the 90s versions dealing with that crazy ASS husband that is Martin, and that is Steve Martin, and you're just like, you're watching her just offer him grace over and over and over again while he goes through his motions, and she does it so lovingly, but it's work, and I like that. I like that they show that. It's just the relationships just seem really real to me.
So, which almost you saying that makes me hope that once quarantine is done, that we can have an actual Father of the Bride 3 to see because we saw how in the movie, the daughter was more George Banks and the husband was more Nina, because George said that in his narration of the movie, like, I get it now. She's me, he's Nina. He's calm. She's more like spastic and crazy. And it makes me wonder if we would get a chance to see who's calm and who's spastic and crazy in the son's relationship. And just to see that dynamic continue. But it was funny. Yeah, it was funny when Robert De Niro couldn't understand what Frank was saying. They kept cutting back to him, and Robert De Niro was like, "What?"
Yeah, it was exciting to see Frank again. That was exciting, and I also normally, like you said, I don't watch even these kind of movies. I mean, that Father of the Bride, obviously back then as kids and stuff like that, we watched it. But the thing about feel-good movies, a lot of times they're so, like, I couldn't even make it through them. Like, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
But this movie, even in the parts that were difficult for me to get through, like when he was playing basketball with his daughter, and it's like, oh my God. But like watching stuff like that, they didn't go too far.
Right.
Where a person like me couldn't get through it. Whereas in a lot of movies, I wouldn't even attempt to watch.
Wouldn't even do
because
it.
of that.
Well, you know what? I really appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that. And I think like that's what, when you talk about what is a family movie, that's what makes a good family movie. It's like, can everyone watch it and no one is walking away resentful of the time that they've spent?
Yeah.
And that truly, the Father of the Bride movies, the originals and the remakes, I would say they're all good family movies, And you know what interview I didn't look up that I think would have been interesting to see? So Elizabeth Taylor was alive. She didn't pass away until 2011. And so, she could have, I'm sure she saw the remake. And it would have been nice to get her perspective and any other actor.
Somewhere. It must be somewhere.
I didn't even think to look it up, until
that's got to be somewhere.
But that would be an interesting perspective to get.
Absolutely. It almost makes me wonder if they tried to get her to do a cameo, but couldn't make it happen. Or maybe she didn't want to. It makes me wonder about that. Because that would have been a great nod to the older movie, to have her be someone in the movie. Yeah. That would have been so cool. Yeah. One thing I definitely want to point out about, I will say, I have never cried at Father of the Bride at all. That's never been the scenario for me. But me watching it in 2020, being and reflecting on life and watching her get married and walking down the aisle with her father, and we've already talked about our father has passed away, and I was like, man, I'm not going to get that. So it was just being able to see it in these lens of where you are now. With that being said, I was thinking about Father of the Bride 3-ish and how the new wife, she's mixed race. And she's also she's a character, which again, we're running into characters now. We've talked about so many things. She was the girlfriend from the Shaft movie, the newest Shaft movie. And so it was just nice seeing her in there and then bringing in a person of color into the main cast of the movie, but also them making a nod to our individuals who are on the front lines of COVID. Yeah, who are our healthcare professionals. She was a doctor in that movie.
She was a doctor
and her
between shifts.
In quarantine in a hotel. And so them just really making a point to really be careful about how they're doing the times right now. And so it was just really nice to have that as well.
Oh, and
I really appreciated that.
You know what you reminded me of, sis, that I forgot to say earlier? You know, watch, and we've talked about this, I think, on the podcast and in general, you know, just offline. Sometimes going back to watch the shows from our childhood that we love and cherish, the shows and movies, the whiteness of them is overwhelming. And it is like, it's so hard because it's like we go back and we watch things from the 80s and it is just like, oh my gosh, these horrible, you know, limited portrayals of people of color and these problematic narratives and just the tropes that they use. And it's hard to laugh now at what was really funny before. And I will just say, I was ready for that. I was like, when I watched Father of the Bride with a critical eye, am I going to appreciate it as being placed in the early 90s? Like, am I going to be ready for that? And can I tell you all, that very first scene where we see George Banks's business, I don't know if y'all noticed, but his team was so diverse in terms of race, age, good mix gender-wise. I was like, man, they were responsible in the 90s. I mean, the movie was about a white family, so everybody was white in terms of the main characters. But when they were showing the world, they showed a diverse world. And I just thought, man, that makes me love the movie even more.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And him being, it made it, the one thing I will say about the Banks family is that this family can translate into any ethnicity. It can translate into any culture because the dynamics of it. You will always family. You will have a father that is concerned about the pricing of things. You will have a wife that is so excited about everything that's happening, a wedding, a baby. You will have a daughter that is crying because you don't understand. Like, you're going to have that. And you have the little son that's just laissez-faire. He's just, whatever is happening, he's just there. You know, you're going to have these characters translate into anyone. And I just really, really appreciate that. And the fact that he was a business owner, but he wasn't some tyrant, awful boss. Like, that was not it. He was a nice family man that knew all of his employees' names. He knew that they had family. So, you know, just really appreciative of how they made that. The movie was very approachable. It was very approachable.
Sis, that was such a good, I feel like that's our closing note, y'all. I mean, that was a good rap note, sis. You know, so I guess it's time to vote. If all hearts and minds are clear, as our late father might have said. You know, let's ask the question now. Does Father of the Bride from 1950, Father's Little Dividend, 1951, Father of the Bride, 1991, Father of the Bride Part 2, 1995, Father of the Bride Part 3-ish.
So you mean the Father of the Bride film series?
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro.
I just want to pause and thank you, bro, because I think people need to see what happens about the way that Aubrey won't let anybody else be great. Do you see that? As soon as someone else.
Thank you.
No, I was just.
Is it about being great, or is it really just about giving things a proper name?
And did you all also just see how Brittany switches allegiances? You never know where she's going to land. Is she on my team or is she on Aubrey's team?
Wild card.
Out of convenience.
But I also appreciate you talking about each movie individually.
I was doing a recap. and here's what y'all really need to know. Brittany wants me to slice up our podcast to make little promos. And so that's actually what I was doing just now, y'all. I was trying to make something that would be a nice little editable chunk, and you ruined it. So
I think this is the perfect
movie
chunk, though, because this is our family.
Does the movie get your what did we say it was? Easy chair.
Easy chair is a classic.
Bro, does the series Get your easy chair.
You know, the funny thing is I was on the fence after the first movie. I just was on the fence because to me, a classic would have still made me laugh. But guess what? You know, especially after watching the 1950 version and then after seeing how they wrapped it all up with number 2 and the fact that, you know, they did the fun thing on Zoom, you know, fun little, you know,
sweet.
little video. I just really say that this is a truly classic film series. Definitely. So it definitely gets my easy chair. I'm gonna buy an easy chair and sit in it.
Yeah. You know what? I have to agree with you, bro. I just think, you know, there is comedy that is nice right now, and then there's comedy that will always be good. And in the original and in the remakes, this is just like funny humanity. You know, they're just taking the parts of us that are funny and putting it in a story that is relatable. And so that to me is a recipe for a classic comedy. So this movie series definitely gets my easy chair.
Absolutely. I will say the series, it gets my easy chair. I would say that at first I was kind of like, let me break up my easy chair. I was like, the 1990s version gets my easy chair. 2020 doesn't get a classic just yet because it just happened. and the 1950 version, you know, it was good. But the series as a whole, because of how they flow, and then again, just how they are about people, they definitely give me an easy chair.
Man, all right. Well, there it is, folks. That's the Wright Perspective. This film series is a classic from our perspective. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Our next episode will be on, and we just decided it live, just partially out of spite of Aubrey. We're going to do the First Wives Club because it was my turn to pick. And so I think the viewing audience.
Bro, I want you to know you brought that on yourself.
I think the viewing and listening audience would listen. I think everyone is thinking Aubrey needs a better appreciation of Diane Keaton. We're all thinking it. And so this is our chance to really celebrate Diane Keaton. And I'm looking forward to going on that journey with you, bro.
And Bette Midler and
Goldie Hawn.
Goldie Hawn. Oh, God. This is a chick flick on 87.
Oh, it is the chickest of the chicks. Oh, Aubrey hates movies where the men are whack. And these men are gonna really
where it's majority women.
Yeah. Well, that's what he gets.
And there's a singing part too. Oh, this is grand.
And you know what though? I'm gonna make a statement right now, and I'm happy the world's gonna hear it. Because I think that this movie is actually great enough that Aubrey Wright, the man you see before you, I think he'll like it. I think Aubrey is going to grudgingly like it because of how well done it is. So that's my forecast.
Well,
oh yeah.
So that's it, folks. That's the Right Perspective. Thank you. My forecast
is he's going to hate it just like every other chick flick he hates. He's going to hate this movie.
All right. Only one of us can be right. Listeners, do you want to know who's right? Tune in to the Right Perspective. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.